She walked through the village with her eyes lowered, her hands clasped tightly in front of her, as though trying to shrink into herself. Every step she took seemed to invite whispers. The laughter of young women floated behind her back, the mocking eyes of young men trailed her like arrows. Her name was Rosa, though no one used it with affection. To most of the villagers, she was simply the ugly one, a girl whose features did not fit the standards of beauty her people celebrated. Her face was marked by scars she had carried since childhood, her skin was roughened by years of hard work under the sun, and her frame, though strong, lacked the grace others admired. For years, she had endured it in silence, the constant humiliation, the dismissive glances, the cruel jokes spoken loudly enough for her to hear. It was as if her existence was a burden to others, as if she was an object meant only to remind them of what beauty was not. What hurt Rosa most was not the laughter itself, but the loneliness it brought. No one saw her heart, the tenderness with which she cared for the earth, the quiet songs she sang when she worked alone, or the dreams she held in silence. To the world around her, she was invisible except when they needed someone to mock. Even the children copied the cruelty of their parents, throwing pebbles in her path and calling her names. And so Rosa lived with her pain folded inside her chest like a secret she could never share, until one day, fate placed before her a stranger who would see her as no one else ever had. It was late afternoon when the first sign of his arrival appeared, a cloud of dust rising beyond the horizon, carried by the steady rhythm of hooves against the earth. The villagers stopped their work, shielding their eyes from the sun as they watched a solitary Apache rider approach, his figure tall and commanding on horseback. His hair was long, dark, and untamed, his skin weathered by wind and sun, his gaze piercing with the weight of unspoken stories. There was something untouchable about him, something that made even the boldest of men lower their voices as he passed. He did not ride with a group, nor did he carry the air of someone seeking approval. He was a man apart, marked by solitude, and beside him rode his horse, a magnificent creature, strong, with eyes that mirrored its master's soul. The Apache did not come to the village for trade or conversation. He came to water his horse, to rest briefly before continuing his journey into lands unknown. But as fate would weave it, his arrival coincided with one of Rosa's most humiliating moments. At the well, a group of young women were filling their jars when Rosa approached with her own. The moment they saw her, they exchanged mocking smiles. One whispered loudly enough for all to hear, "Careful, the ugly one might poison the water with her reflection." Laughter erupted, cruel and sharp, cutting into Rosa's chest like knives. Rosa froze, her cheeks burning, her throat tightening with the familiar ache of shame. She wanted to turn away, to disappear, but her jar was empty and she needed water. Still, her trembling hands betrayed her, and as she tried to lower the jar, it slipped and shattered against the stones, the water splashing onto her dress as the mocking voices grew louder. The Apache had been watching from the shade of his horse. His eyes did not join in the laughter, nor did they avert in indifference. Instead, he dismounted silently, walked toward Rosa, and without a word, knelt to gather the broken pieces of her jar. The crowd fell into an uneasy silence. No one expected him, a stranger, to involve himself. Yet there he was, his hands steady, his presence commanding, his voice calm as he spoke to her for the first time. The earth does not judge what vessel carries its water. It only gives. His words were simple, but they fell upon Rosa's wounded heart like rain on dry soil. For the first time in her life, someone had spoken to her without mockery, without pity, but with quiet dignity. He offered her his own flask, filled with cool water, and lifted it toward her with respect. Rosa hesitated, her eyes wide with disbelief, before accepting it with trembling hands. She dared to look up into his face then, and what she found there was not judgment, not ridicule, but recognition, as if he saw beyond her scars, beyond the shell she had been trapped in for so long. The villagers watched, confused, their whispers now hushed. The Apache did not linger for their approval. Instead, he turned to his horse, mounted once more, and gestured toward the open plain. "If you wish," he said to Rosa, "walk with me a while. The earth is kinder beyond these walls." Something in his voice, something steady and sincere, stirred within her a courage she never knew she had. Against the weight of all the years of mockery, Rosa took a step forward. She left behind the laughter of her village and followed him into the vast horizon. For days, they traveled together, she on foot, he on horseback, yet never did he ride so far ahead that she could not catch up. He spoke little, but when he did, his words carried the depth of silence, teaching her to listen to the songs of the wind, the rhythm of rivers, the whispers of the earth. He showed her how to read the tracks of animals, how to find food where others saw only barren land, how to move with patience and strength. In his presence, Rosa began to see herself differently, not as the girl mocked for her appearance, but as someone capable, resilient, and full of untapped worth. There were moments along the journey that tested her. Nights when the cold bit deep, when exhaustion pressed heavy on her body, when memories of cruel laughter returned to haunt her. But in those moments, the Apache's quiet companionship became her anchor. He never coddled her, never spoke words of empty comfort, but his steady gaze reminded her of a truth she had long forgotten, that she was more than the reflection others scorned. One night, as they sat by the fire, Rosa found herself whispering the words she had never dared speak aloud: "They call me ugly." The Apache looked at her for a long moment, then said, "The earth does not call the mountain ugly because it is jagged, nor the river unworthy because it is rough. Beauty is not in the face. It is in the strength to endure, in the heart that gives, in the soul that rises again after it has been broken." Tears welled in Rosa's eyes, not of sorrow, but of release, as if those words had finally unchained her spirit. As days turned into weeks, Rosa's spirit began to bloom. She laughed for the first time in years, her voice carrying like music across the plains. She sang her quiet songs aloud now, no longer ashamed of being heard. She discovered a grace in herself that had nothing to do with appearances, a beauty born of courage, kindness, and resilience. And the Apache, though a man of solitude, found in her presence a warmth he had not known for a long time. His horse, once wary, grew gentle under Rosa's touch, as if sensing the quiet strength within her. Together, the three of them formed a bond not of necessity, but of choice, a companionship built on respect and acceptance. The true transformation came one morning when they returned briefly to Rosa's village. The same people who had once mocked her now stared in disbelief as she walked beside the Apache, her posture tall, her eyes steady, her steps unbroken by shame. The whispers rose again, but this time Rosa did not shrink. Instead, she lifted her gaze, and for the first time, she met their eyes without fear. The Apache dismounted, placed his hand gently on her shoulder, and spoke loud enough for all to hear, "You mocked what you could not see. But I see her. And in her, I see strength greater than beauty, and a spirit brighter than any jewel." His words silenced the crowd, their laughter dying in their throats. Rosa stood not as the girl they once humiliated, but as someone reborn through the compassion of one who had dared to see her truth. The villagers never mocked her again. Some, ashamed, even sought her forgiveness. But Rosa no longer needed their approval. She had found her worth, not in their eyes, but within herself. She chose to leave with the Apache once more, not because she was running from her past, but because she was walking toward her future. Together, they journeyed into lands unknown, carrying with them a bond forged in kindness and acceptance. And though Rosa's scars remained, they no longer defined her. They had become symbols of survival, of the path she had walked, of the strength she now carried. In time, stories spread of the girl once mocked for her face, who walked beside a lone Apache and his horse, her spirit unshaken, her heart radiant. To some, it was a tale of unlikely companionship. To others, it was a lesson that compassion has the power to transform not only a single life, but the hearts of all who witness it. For Rosa herself, it was simply the truth, that one act of kindness, one moment of being seen, had awakened the beauty that had always lived within her. And so she lived, no longer hidden in the shadows of ridicule, but standing tall in the light of dignity, proof that the power of humanity lies not in perfection, but in the courage to love and to be loved for who we truly are.